In a fiery address broadcast live across the nation from the State House grounds, Botswana's newly installed military president, General Elias Kgotso, stunned citizens and international observers alike with an audacious vow to spectacularly transform the diamond-rich southern African nation within just 3 years. Speaking to a crowd of thousands under the scorching Kalahari sun, flanked by armored vehicles and a phalanx of uniformed officers, Kgotso dismissed any notion of prolonged deliberation or extended timelines, declaring that true military leadership demands swift, decisive action, or it amounts to abject failure. The pledge comes amid the turbulent aftermath of last month's military intervention, which saw Kgotso, a 52-year-old veteran of Botswana's defense force with a storied career in counterpoaching operations and regional peacekeeping missions, seize power from the civilian government in what he described as a necessary reset to combat corruption, economic stagnation, and climate-induced hardships. Critics have labeled it a coup, while supporters hail it as a patriotic intervention. But in today's speech, Kgotso shifted the focus squarely to his vision for rapid change, framing it as a personal and professional ultimatum. "I stand before you not as a politician who needs 6 months to ponder policies or 10 years to fulfill empty promises," Kgotso boomed into the microphone, his voice echoing over the assembled throng of civilians, soldiers and foreign diplomats. "As a military leader, I know that hesitation kills, and procrastination is the enemy of progress. If I require long years to deliver on this pledge, then I have failed, not just as your president, but as a soldier sworn to protect and uplift this land." Delving into the specifics of his 3-year blueprint, Kgotso outlined a multifaceted agenda that he claims will revolutionize Botswana's economy, infrastructure, and social fabric. At the heart of his plan is an aggressive push to diversify away from diamond dependency, which currently accounts for over 80% of export revenues but has left the country vulnerable to global market fluctuations and environmental degradation from mining activities. He promised to invest heavily in renewable energy, leveraging Botswana's abundant solar potential to build a network of mega-solar farms across the arid landscapes of the Central District. "Within 3 years, we will power every village, every school, every hospital with clean energy," he asserted, vowing to partner with international firms while ensuring Botswana owns the sun that shines on us. Kgotso's military background infused his rhetoric with tactical metaphors, likening the nation's challenges to a battlefield where strategic strikes are essential. He detailed plans for a shock-and-awe approach to infrastructure, constructing high-speed rail links connecting Gaborone to Francistown and Monde, modernizing the aging road network to withstand increasing flood risks from climate change, and upgrading water management systems to combat the perennial droughts that have ravaged agriculture. Drawing from his experience in rapid deployment forces, he emphasized efficiency. "In the military, we don't wait for perfect conditions, we adapt and execute. This country will see bridges built in months, not decades." On the social front, the general pledged to eradicate poverty hotspots in rural areas, where over 20% of the population still lives below the poverty line despite Botswana's upper-middle income status. He announced immediate reforms to the education system, including mandatory vocational training in green technologies and entrepreneurship for all secondary students, aiming to create a workforce of innovators rather than dependence on government handouts. Health initiatives would focus on expanding access to antiretroviral treatments for HIV/AIDS, a lingering public health crisis, while introducing mobile clinics equipped with AI diagnostics, technology he claims will be sourced from alliances with tech-savvy nations like South Korea and Israel. But Kgotso's address went beyond policy bullet points, probing deeper into the philosophical underpinnings of his leadership style. He contrasted his approach with what he called the civilian malaise of previous administrations, accusing them of bureaucratic inertia that allowed issues like youth unemployment, hovering at 35%, to fester. "A true leader doesn't hide behind committees or endless consultations," he said, referencing his own rise through the ranks during Botswana's involvement in SADC peacekeeping operations in Mozambique and Lesotho. "In the field, if you take 6 months to plan an operation, the enemy has already won. Similarly, if I need 10 years to fix our economy, I've betrayed the trust of every Botswana." Analysts are already dissecting the implications of this self-imposed deadline. Supporters argue it injects much-needed urgency into a nation that, despite its stability and low corruption rankings compared to regional peers, has seen GDP growth slow to under 3% annually in recent years due to post-pandemic recovery lags and commodity price volatility. "This is military precision applied to governance," said one Gaborone-based economist, who requested anonymity amid the tense political climate. 3 years is ambitious, but with diamond revenues and potential foreign aid, it's not impossible if corruption is truly stamped out. Skeptics, however, warn of the risks inherent in such compressed timelines. Human rights groups, including Amnesty International's regional office, have expressed concerns that the pledge could justify authoritarian measures, such as curtailing civil liberties or rushing through reforms without public input. Pledging spectacular change is one thing, delivering it without trampling on democracy is another, noted a statement from the Botswana Center for Human Rights. Kgotso's reference to failure as a military leader also raises eyebrows. Does it imply he'd step down if unmet, or could it foreshadow further instability? The international community watches closely, with the African Union and SADC urging a return to civilian rule, while Western donors like the EU and US weigh sanctions against aid. Kgotso addressed this head-on, pledging to maintain Botswana's non-aligned foreign policy but seeking strategic partnerships, rather than handouts. He invoked the legacy of founding President Seretse Khama, blending it with his own martial ethos. Khama built this nation from the sands, I will fortify it like a fortress. As the sun set on the rally, chants of 3 years to victory rippled through the crowd, but questions lingered in the air. How will Kgotso measure spectacular change, through GDP metrics, poverty reduction rates, or something more intangible like national morale? What safeguards exist to prevent the pledge from devolving into overreach? And in a country long celebrated for its democratic resilience, does this mark the dawn of a new era or the eclipse of old freedoms? Yet Kgotso's vision extended far beyond infrastructure and energy, plunging into the thorny underbelly of governance itself. In what many attendees described as the most impassioned portion of his address, the general turned his sights on corruption, portraying it as the insidious rot at the core of Botswana's stagnation. We will end corruption to the bare minimum, he declared, his fist pounding the podium for emphasis, reducing it not just in perception, but in practice, until it is a relic of the past. My government is hell-bent on this fight, unyielding, relentless, like a battalion storming an enemy stronghold. Kgotso framed anti-corruption efforts as the foundational pillar of his 3-year transformation, insisting that without it, all other reforms would crumble like sandcastles in the Okavango Delta's floods. Fighting corruption is the first step in improving governance and accelerating the fast growth of our economy, he explained, drawing on military analogies once more. Just as a compromised supply line dooms an operation, graft and nepotism siphon resources from the people. We've seen how even modest levels of corruption erode trust, inflate costs, and deter investors. In Botswana, where our corruption perceptions index score has dipped to 57 out of 100 according to recent assessments, we cannot afford complacency. He highlighted how, despite Botswana's enviable ranking as one of Africa's least corrupt nations, 43rd globally in the latest Transparency International report, the subtle creep of favoritism in diamond tenders and public procurement has contributed to economic vulnerabilities, including the projected near-zero growth for 2025 amid a diamond market slump. Delving into the mechanics of his strategy, Kgotso outlined a sweeping, zero-tolerance regime that would begin immediately. He vowed to establish an independent anti-corruption task force, modeled after elite special forces units, empowered to conduct surprise audits, forensic investigations, and lifestyle checks on all public servants, from ministers to municipal clerks. We will scrutinize every government official, every contract, every expenditure, he said, his gaze sweeping the crowd as if challenging hidden adversaries. No sacred cows, no untouchables. If a permanent secretary drives a luxury vehicle on a civil servant's salary, we will trace the funds. If a procurement officer favors a relative's bid, they will face military-style tribunals, swift, fair, and unforgiving. This scrutiny, Kgotso argued, would unlock cascading benefits across sectors. By minimizing leakages in the budget, estimated by some experts to account for up to 10 to 15% of public spending in subtle forms like over-invoicing, he projected savings that could be redirected toward urgent priorities, such as bolstering the non-mining economy, which has shown resilience but struggles against high unemployment rates nearing 28% and a Gini coefficient of 53.3, signaling extreme inequality. Imagine roads built without kickbacks, hospitals stocked without pilfered supplies, he painted vividly, alluding to the recent public health emergency declared over medicine shortages. Enhanced governance would attract foreign direct investment, he claimed, particularly in tourism and agriculture, fostering job creation for the youth and reducing reliance on volatile diamond revenues that have dragged growth forecasts to the brink. But Kgotso went deeper, linking anti-corruption to national ethos and military discipline. He recounted anecdotes from his career, such as rooting out smuggling rings during anti-poaching patrols along the Zimbabwe border, to illustrate how integrity breeds efficiency. In the defense force, corruption means lives lost, equipment fails, intelligence leaks. In government, it means futures stolen, schools underfunded, clinics empty. This step is non-negotiable. With it, our entire agenda will be achieved, propelling Botswana toward unprecedented prosperity. Reactions poured in as the speech unfolded. Proponents, including business leaders from the Botswana Chamber of Commerce, praised the initiative as a bold reset, noting that even low-level corruption has amplified challenges like climate shocks and economic diversification hurdles. Detractors, however, voiced fears of witch hunts, with opposition figures in exile warning that such scrutiny could morph into purges, silencing dissent under the guise of cleanliness. International watchdogs echoed concerns, questioning whether the task force's independence could withstand military oversight. As Kgotso's words hung in the air, the rally's energy shifted from jubilation to a mix of hope and apprehension, with whispers circulating about potential high-profile arrests in the coming weeks. Yet Kgotso's address took an even more provocative turn as he pivoted to continental aspirations, positioning Botswana's transformation within a broader Pan-African narrative inspired by recent upheavals in West Africa. Today, I declare that Botswana has joined the pace set by our brothers in Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger, he proclaimed, invoking the military-led governments that have reshaped the Sahel region since their coups in 2020 to 2023. These nations, under juntas led by figures like Captain Ibrahim Traoré in Burkina Faso, Colonel Assimi Goïta in Mali, and General Abdourahmane Tiani in Niger, have forged the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, a mutual defense pact established in September 2023 and formalized into a confederation in July 2024, emphasizing sovereignty and resistance to external influence. Kgotso lauded their model as a blueprint for decisive action, highlighting how they've withdrawn from the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, in January 2024 to prioritize national interests over regional blocs perceived as Western proxies. Extending his call to arms, Kgotso urged unity across the continent. I call on all African countries to join this race toward true independence and self-determination. This is the only way Africa can be saved, from the chains of neo-colonialism, from the exploitation that has bled our resources dry for generations. He painted a vivid picture of a fragmented Africa redeemed through collective resolve, drawing parallels to the AES's anti-imperialist stance, which has seen deepened ties with Russia for military support, including defense agreements signed in 2024 to 2025 that provide arms and training to combat insurgencies while sidelining former partners like France and the US. In Botswana's context, this alignment signals a potential shift from its historically stable, pro-Western foreign policy toward a more assertive, resource-sovereign posture, potentially straining relations with bodies like the Southern African Development Community, SADC, which has condemned similar coups in the Sahel. At the core of Kgotso's emulation lies the nationalization of resources, a policy aggressively pursued by the AES trio to reclaim economic control. We will nationalize the whole nation's resources, he vowed, echoing moves in Mali and Burkina Faso, where military governments have revoked mining permits from foreign firms and seized gold operations to boost state revenues amid ongoing jihadist threats and economic pressures. In Niger, similar efforts target uranium mines, long dominated by French interests, aiming to renegotiate contracts for fairer shares. For Botswana, this would mean taking full ownership of its diamond industry, currently a 50-50 joint venture between the government and De Beers through Botswana, as well as other assets like coal, copper, and nascent lithium deposits. Kgotso argued that such bold steps would generate huge revenue by eliminating profit outflows to multinational corporations, estimating that full nationalization could double state earnings from mining, which already contribute about 30% to GDP but see significant portions repatriated abroad. Delving into the economic rationale, Kgotso explained how these revenues would fuel his ambitious agenda. With our resources fully in Botswanan hands, we will have enough funds to set up world-class infrastructure and energy projects, he elaborated, projecting that reclaimed diamond profits alone could finance the solar megafarms and high-speed rail he outlined earlier, potentially adding billions to the national coffers annually. He cited AES precedents. Burkina Faso's nationalization of gold mines has reportedly increased export revenues by 20% in 2024, funding military campaigns and social programs despite international sanctions. Mali's similar reforms have targeted artisanal mining reforms to curb smuggling, channeling funds into infrastructure like roads and electrification in jihadist-affected regions. In Botswana, where diamond sales dipped in 2024 due to global slowdowns, Kgotso envisioned a sovereign wealth fund bolstered by nationalized assets, enabling investments in desalination plants to address water scarcity and green hydrogen projects to export clean energy to Europe, positioning the country as a regional powerhouse. Yet the proposal's depth reveals layers of complexity and risk. Critics at the rally murmured about potential investor flight, noting how AES nationalizations have prompted withdrawals by companies like Orano in Niger, leading to short-term production halts and legal battles in international courts. Kgotso countered by framing it as a necessary decolonization step, aligning with AES rhetoric that portrays foreign mining as exploitative, with minimal local benefits amid environmental damage like water pollution in Botswana's mining hubs. He delved into social equity, arguing that nationalization would redistribute wealth to marginalized communities, such as the San people displaced by diamond operations, through job guarantees and revenue-sharing models. Internationally, this Pan-African call could inspire or alarm neighbors. South Africa and Namibia, with their own mining sectors, might view it as a contagion, while Zimbabwe's resource nationalism under similar military influences offers a cautionary tale of hyperinflation and isolation. As Kgotso's invocation of the Sahel resonated through the speakers, the crowd's response fractured along generational lines. Youth cheering the radicalism, elders wary of echoing the AES's human rights controversies, including reports of junta-led crackdowns on dissent and media freedoms. Diplomatic ripples were immediate, with envoys from AES countries in attendance nodding approvingly, hinting at potential cross-regional alliances that could redefine African geopolitics. Building on his Pan-African rallying cry, Kgotso shifted gears to domestic welfare, pledging a radical overhaul of social services with housing at its apex. "I will make sure there is shelter for all our citizens, ensuring every Botswana has decent accommodations worthy of their dignity," he asserted, his tone softening momentarily as he evoked images of families huddled in makeshift shacks amid Botswana's sprawling savannas. Drawing inspiration from historical precedents, Kgotso spotlighted the late Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi's tenure as a shining instance of state-driven housing equity. "Look to what Gaddafi did in Libya," he urged, recounting how Gaddafi declared housing a fundamental human right in the 1970s, vowing that no Libyan would own a home until all citizens were housed, a commitment symbolized by Gaddafi's own parents remaining without a permanent residence until broader needs were met, with his father reportedly passing away homeless to underscore the principle. Under Gaddafi's socialist reforms, enshrined in the Green Book and implemented through the Revolutionary Command Council, private property ownership was curtailed, with tens of thousands of homes, offices, and workshops confiscated from landlords and redistributed to tenants and the underclass in the late 1970s, effectively abolishing rent and turning occupants into de facto owners overnight. This policy, Kgotso noted, extended to generous subsidies, including up to 60,000 Libyan dinars, around $50,000 at the time, provided to newlyweds for purchasing their first apartments, fostering family stability and population growth in a resource-rich nation. While acknowledging the controversies, such as claims of extreme measures like forbidding locks on doors to prevent hoarding of empty properties, allowing any vacant home to be occupied, Kgotso praised the intent as a bold strike against inequality, even as critics argue it discouraged long-term investment and led to urban decay. Content.time.com. Content.time.com. Echoing this model but tailoring it to Botswana's context, Kgotso vowed that no one will be homeless under my watch. The government will take full responsibility for housing projects, building affordable, modern units across urban and rural divides. He detailed a comprehensive plan to launch massive public housing initiatives, funded by the revenues from nationalized resources, aiming to construct over 100,000 units in 3 years through partnerships with state-owned enterprises and international allies like China, which has financed similar megaprojects in Africa. These would include eco-friendly designs adapted to Botswana's climate, featuring solar-powered homes in arid zones and elevated structures in flood-prone areas like the Okavango Delta, ensuring resilience against environmental threats that have displaced thousands in recent years. In this way, the people will truly enjoy the fruit of their land, he emphasized, linking housing security to the broader resource sovereignty agenda, where diamond and mineral wealth would directly translate into tangible benefits rather than enriching foreign shareholders. Kgotso elevated housing to the top priority of the government, surpassing even anti-corruption in immediacy, arguing that stable homes form the bedrock of productivity, health, and social harmony. To reduce homelessness to its absolute minimum, currently affecting an estimated 5 to 10% of the population in informal settlements around Gaborone and Francistown, he proposed a multi-pronged strategy: immediate audits of vacant government properties for redistribution, zero-interest loans for low-income families modeled after Gaddafi's newlywed grants, and mandatory inclusionary zoning in all new developments to allocate 30% of units for subsidized housing. "Every citizen deserves a home, not as a luxury, but as a right etched in our national covenant," he declared, delving into the psychological toll of instability, citing studies on how homelessness exacerbates mental health issues and perpetuates poverty cycles, particularly among the youth and San indigenous communities marginalized by land dispossession. The depth of his commitment sparked immediate debate among the audience. Urban planners in attendance whispered about the feasibility, noting Botswana's existing housing backlog of over 200,000 units amid a population of 2.4 million, compounded by rapid urbanization at 4% annually. Supporters drew parallels to Gaddafi's early successes, where free medical care and education complemented housing efforts, lifting Libya's Human Development Index before later conflicts unraveled gains. Yet skeptics invoked the darker side of Gaddafi's legacy, such as post-1970s property disputes that fueled restitution demands after his fall in 2011, warning that aggressive nationalization could lead to legal quagmires and deter private sector involvement. International observers, including UN Habitat representatives monitoring Africa's housing crises, noted the ambition's alignment with Sustainable Development Goal 11 but questioned enforcement in a military-led regime, especially given reports of evictions in Libya under Gaddafi for political reasons. As Kgotso outlined satellite towns inspired by Gaddafi's grand infrastructure visions, like the Great Man-Made River project that indirectly supported housing expansion, tensions simmered, with chance of homes for all clashing against murmurs of concern over potential overreach. Transitioning from social welfare to the realm of stability, Kgotso addressed the delicate matter of political evolution, asserting that power will change hands once his reforms take root, but only under the umbrella of unassailable national security. This cryptic nod to potential future transitions, perhaps a return to civilian governance after his self-imposed 3-year deadline, served as a segue into his fervent emphasis on fortifying Botswana's defenses. Making national security our unbreakable shield is paramount, he stated, outlining a vision where security operates at its highest level, bolstered by cutting-edge gadgets, modern equipment, and a cadre of well-trained officials capable of anticipating crises, relating to community issues, and delivering swift, adequate solutions. Drawing from his military heritage, Kgotso positioned security as one of the top priorities of this government, second only to the air we breathe and the land we till. Elaborating on this pillar, Kgotso tied it directly to his alignment with the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, suggesting that Botswana's entry into this race would import proven strategies from Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger, where joint forces have been established to combat terrorism and external threats. He highlighted the AES's recent formation of a 5,000-strong joint task force equipped with air, land and intelligence assets, proposing similar collaborations to address Botswana's unique vulnerabilities, such as cross-border poaching, illegal immigration from Zimbabwe, and smuggling of small arms that fuel wildlife crime and urban violence. In the Sahel, they've shown how unified security can reclaim sovereignty. We will adapt that here, ensuring power changes hands peacefully, without the chaos that has plagued others, he explained, alluding to the AES's mutual defense pacts and Russian-backed enhancements that include advanced weaponry and training. Delving into the specifics, Kgotso unveiled plans to modernize the Botswana Defense Force, BDF, and allied agencies with revenues from nationalized resources, projecting an infusion of billions to procure state-of-the-art gadgets like unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, for border surveillance, thermal imaging cameras to thwart poachers in the dead of night, and AI-driven predictive analytics systems to forecast crisis hotspots. He drew parallels to advancements in other African militaries, such as Kenya's integration of fighter jets and artillery for rapid response, or South Africa's use of night vision and grenade launchers in peacekeeping operations, vowing to equip BDF units with similar tools, including armored personnel carriers, APCs, infantry fighting vehicles, IFVs, and cyber defense platforms to counter emerging threats like data breaches and digital sabotage outlined in Botswana's new Data Protection Act. Our officials will be well trained, not just in combat, but in community engagement, understanding the root causes of issues like poverty-driven poaching or refugee influxes, and bringing solutions that prevent escalation, he added, referencing ongoing developments in Botswana's national anti-poaching strategy for 2025 to 2030 and the forthcoming national security strategy to address internal threats like HIV, AIDS, and economic disparities. This high-level security framework, Kgotso argued, would enable proactive crisis management, from natural disasters exacerbated by climate change to potential insurgencies inspired by regional instabilities. He envisioned specialized rapid response teams, akin to those in the AES's counterterrorism efforts, equipped with modern rocket-propelled grenades, submachine guns, and exoskeletons for enhanced mobility in rugged terrains like the Kalahari. International partnerships, potentially with Russia as seen in the Sahel or Turkey's expanding military footprint in Africa, would facilitate training programs emphasizing de-escalation and human rights, though critics quickly pointed to AES controversies involving junta-led crackdowns. The general countered by stressing accountability, including reviews of the Directorate of Intelligence and Security Services, DSS, Act to enhance oversight amid concerns over past abuses. As he spoke, the crowd's reactions mirrored the nation's divided sentiments. Military personnel applauded the empowerment, while civil society representatives expressed unease about the implications for democracy, fearing that power changing hands might be a euphemism for prolonged rule under the guise of security. Regional analysts noted the potential for strained SADC relations, given Botswana's participation in multinational exercises like Justified Accord 2025, which focus on crisis response but could conflict with AES alignments. With whispers of private military contractors entering the fray, as seen in other African contexts, the address left many pondering whether this fortified future would safeguard or stifle Botswana's hard-won peace.